Awesome, you guys. Well, welcome back to Fiercely Unstoppable. I am so excited to be here. This is an incredible, exciting experience because we have Kristen Harnes. And she is going to share her story and share her message. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Why don't you start us off by telling us a little background? How did you get to where you are today? And what do you do?
Well, I'll start with what I do, I guess.
Sure.
So I'm the founder and CEO of a Colorado-based nonprofit called Extending Hands of Hope. And I'm also in the process of starting my own for-profit business called Executive 31. So Extending Hands of Hope, our mission there is to offer safe housing and supportive services to survivors of sex trafficking. So we typically work with girls ages 11 to 17, but we do work with some adult women. But we have a safe home, actually opened up the first safe home in Denver specifically for this population. And we have a licensed school called Forward Learning Academy. We have a community program where we offer a continuum of care for the girls once they leave the safe home. And then we just opened up a bakery, social enterprise bakery called Simply Good Cakery. And we use that to raise awareness about human trafficking because it's such a dark and heavy subject that people don't want to hear about. And so we use these little cupcakes that are fun and lighthearted to get our foot in the door somewhere and talk about human trafficking.
Where's the bakery so people can listen? Because I lived in Denver, so I have some followers in Denver. People are like, ooh, tell me more. Where is that?
So right now we're using a commissary kitchen.
Okay,
cool. But we offer delivery and pickup. And so if you go to simplygoodcakery.com, you can order on there. We're starting orders up again in February because we kind of took January off. So, and then with Executive 31, I'm working on that. Just kind of was birthed out of my experience as a female nonprofit executive, and I'm focusing this business on helping other women that are in my shoes. And so just to go back to kind of my story, it's a lot, but
encouraged you to get into this field because like you said earlier, it's not something that a lot of people want to talk about. It's not something that a lot of people have awareness of, but it's a really important pressing matter.
Right.
And it's important, like, it's one of those things that I feel like you have to be so strong, and I am so happy and honored to be in your space because the strength that you have to be able to have this mission is incredible.
Yeah, I don't always feel strong.
I know.
But, I just feel like somebody has to do it. Somebody has to be there and help these girls and be a voice for them because so many people don't want to hear it. It's just too ugly for them.
Right.
Or when they hear about this issue of human trafficking, and specifically for us, child sex trafficking. Okay, we're talking about the average age of entry into the commercial sex industry in the United States is 12 years old.
Wow.
We're working with girls sometimes younger than that. There's babies that are being trafficked in Colorado, in my home state, and all around. And so people, rightfully so, they'd rather pretend that doesn't happen. And so there needs to be people out there that are saying, hey, I'm going to accept that this is a reality and I want to do something about it. So I don't always feel strong, but I feel called to it. And I think it's birthed from what I've experienced. I won't get into all the details, but, I grew up without my dad. My dad was, I experienced domestic violence, witnessed it between my dad and my mom. And my dad left when I was 5 years old, in and out of my life. Experienced a lot of the kind of common negative repercussions of a young girl not having her father in her life. And so I, looked for love in all the wrong places. I wanted to be accepted. I wanted any man who walked my way to validate me and want me. And so, I just kind of lived a destructive life. I carried around a lot of anger and hurt. At the age of 14, I was sexually assaulted by a little older guy that I knew, and, had the police deal with the situation, but nothing ever happened. I never even received follow-up from the police. And so my experience with that really stuck with me. And I never told my mom or anybody, I just kind of kept that in. And a few friends knew because it happened at a party, and they're the ones that actually found me and called the police. But other than that, I didn't talk about it.
Right.
And so I held that in, and that really created even more brokenness in my life. And so I was, in my teenage years, really involved in drinking, partying, very rebellious. I was a very violent girl. I mean, people look at me now and they're like, seriously, that was you? But I had a false identity that I took on. I went by a different name.
Yeah.
So it was just crazy. And then at the age of 17, I was raped by a stranger at a club in downtown Denver. I was left on the streets there. And, you know, just that whole part of my life, there was a lot of just sexual violence and assaults and all that kind of stuff that was just going on around the people that I was hanging around with. It was just like common nature, like common environment. And it was really damaging and destructive.
And I can understand that, right? That is some terrible stuff that I hope that most people don't have to endure. And I, you know, my heart reaches out to you. But the most beautiful thing about this, that I'm, you know, really sitting here and I want to smile, but not in like the bad way, but because here's where you are today.
Yes.
And I think that when people go through these traumatic experiences, and not even I know that when people go through these traumatic experiences, they always have a choice to, okay, I can take this path.
Right.
I mean, there's multiple choices. It's not black and white, but they can take this path, or they can take this path and help others. So obviously you went through all this stuff and this encouraged you to maybe do this, but how did we get to the point where you decided, I'm going to start a business.
Right.
I'm going to choose myself.
Right.
Rather than, you said that, okay, I was looking for love in all the wrong places. How did that transition? I'd love to talk about self-love a little bit too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to go back to what you said about that choice.
Yeah.
I had to, just a year and a half ago, face what I went through, and I had to be able to accept the fact that I didn't choose to have those bad things happen to me, but I absolutely had the choice to decide to move forward and to heal.
Absolutely.
And to face them and to do something about it. And so that's so important. We do have a choice in our healing. But going through those things, experiencing those things, led me to, I was just at rock bottom.
Yeah.
I went to this local church, you know, I was looking for something.
What church did you go to? I'm so curious.
Right now I go to Flatirons Church.
I love Flatirons.
Yeah. But this is not the church I'm talking about. Flatirons is a great church.
I just miss Colorado. Let's just reminisce.
Yeah. Flatirons is great. I've been going there for about 6 years now. But this is, I'm not going to name this church. But I went to this church for 15 years. Yeah. Dealt with sexual exploitation and sexual abuse in that church by the pastor's son there. And And I bring that up because I want to paint this picture of this incredibly broken, dark place that I was in. And what happened with me is this is probably around the age of 21, 22, I finally just hit my lowest of low. Yeah. And I was like, I need change. And, you know, I'm a Christian woman, and I attribute my healing to my relationship with God. And so I just accepted God into my heart, and I was like, all right, I need my life to be changed. Yeah. And it wasn't this instant thing.
No,
but something happened in me. Literally, somebody said to me the next day when I went in, they're like, where is this dark cloud? You used to carry around this dark cloud on you, and you look so light and bright now. Oh, and it was amazing. And so it was just this process. Yeah. It was just this process, and I knew that I was healing when I stopped looking at myself and all the stuff that I had gone through and self-pity, and I started having this overwhelming compassion for other young women and young girls that had gone through sexual violence of any kind, and injustice and oppression, which, by the way, while we sit here and do this interview, millions of people are being abused and oppressed and enslaved and rejected and abandoned, and I just started having this compassion for them. And so I took some trips. I went to Thailand, I went to Haiti after the earthquake, and I just wanted to do what I could to be there with the people that nobody else wanted to be with.
Yeah.
And I just had a love
amazing.
for those people. I mean, it was because I knew that I had been at the lowest of low, and that you could heal.
Yeah.
You could change. You don't have to let that be your life and define the rest of your life.
Yes.
And so that, when I went to Thailand in 2004, Pattaya, and it's about 62 miles southeast of Bangkok. It was 70%, back then, 70% of the population was involved in prostitution. It's a sex tourism town, so everywhere I went were Western men and Thai women and children. And it just rocked my world. That trip was insane for me, and I remember just like dropping to my knees in the middle of the streets in Thailand. I was just bawling my eyes out for these women and these children that were being exploited and being trafficked, and I was like, what the hell? I had never really heard the term human trafficking before. So I left there.
I think it's something that people, you know, I feel like we hear it in the movies.
Yeah.
And it's something that I even ask sometimes, I'm like, is this actually happening in our country? Like, because it's something that we don't know enough about. It's something that I don't know enough about, you know, and I'm not that I'm not curious about it, because it's crazy. And that's why I think that what you do and this power of this platform that you have to be able to make people more aware is really, really so incredible, because people just don't know. And if people aren't reporting about it, and if people aren't talking about it, they're never gonna know.
Right. And the trouble is, when people hear human trafficking, they think of places like Thailand. They think of
Rather
Cambodia.
Than, like you said, even in Denver, in your hometown,
Colorado has some of the highest instances of reported child sex trafficking in the nation. And the trouble is, it looks different here than it does in Thailand. Yeah. So when we're looking, and it looks different here than it does in the movies, right? Like the movie Taken.
Right, of course. It's like,
you know what I'm saying? Everybody says
when
that.
I
That's why I brought it up.
my mom was like, what if you get taken? I was like, I'm not going to get taken. It's going to be good. Like, you know, and she was kind of joking at the same time, but you know,
there's a misconception
exactly.
about it.
I mean, that's what media does. Like, you just don't really know what to really, what is really the truth, or what's actually going on. Except for when people like you speak up and say, hey, this is what's happening.
Yes.
You know?
And it's, you know, it's a crime that people say is hidden in plain sight.
Yeah.
So it's really all around us. Literally, it's all around us. It's from, if you're talking about human trafficking, you know, you're talking about labor trafficking, sex trafficking, and then child sex trafficking. Okay, so those are the three overarching forms of human trafficking, and then it happens within different areas under that, like within the family, within massage parlors, within nail salons, within restaurants, within the hospitality industry, on the streets, online. And so it's important for us to understand what it looks like, what the red flags are, because we're totally missing it. We are, as a society here, we are totally missing what trafficking is. But going back, after I left Thailand, I spent years trying to educate myself on human trafficking, so I could understand. What did I just see? Who's it happening to? What does it look like? How can I help? Was the last question for me. Was how can I help? I can no longer, because, you know, going back to my passion for women and children that have gone through sexual violence, to me this was the worst, because not only were they being raped on a daily basis, let's just keep it real, that's what it is, somebody else is profiting off of it. And to me, that's the most disturbing thing. And so I started thinking that I was going to, you know, go live in Thailand and save Thailand, and then started hearing that it's the second fastest growing organized crime in the United States. It's not new, okay? It's been going on. We're just starting to recognize it a lot more. But that was happening all over the U.S., all over Colorado, that I didn't need to go back to Thailand to do anything. And so that birthed in me this idea of starting the nonprofit Extending Hands of Hope, because during that time, trying to understand the environment in Colorado in regards to human trafficking, I found out that there was no safe home at all for these girls. So you've got these young girls, 13-year-old girl, 90% or more of them have a past history of sexual abuse, so they've been abused their whole life. Now they're being trafficked. And now there was no place for them to go. And so that's how Extending Hands of Hope started.
That's so amazing.
Opened up a safe home, grew from there.
Did you start this on your own?
I did.
Or did you have, so you didn't have anyone partner with you? You're kind of like, okay,
no.
I'm going to run full force and do this.
No. You can't do this without other people.
Well, of course.
So the main thing for me was taking this vision that I had for the safe home, sharing it with people, and bringing the community. I mean, the community has been so incredible.
That's awesome.
And the nonprofit alone, since we started 6 years ago, we've doubled our donations and revenue every year. So people are really getting behind supporting these young girls, you know.
That's so awesome. It gives me goosebumps just like thinking about that.
It's such an incredible program. I know I'm a little bit biased, but we have such an amazing team, and we have grown so much over the years, and I'm just so proud of the program.
Because it's something that obviously we can tell just how excited you are to talk about this. You know, that you are very passionate about this. And I think it goes to show that when you are this passionate about something, something I talk about my clients all the time is when you are figuring out your brand and your message and your story and your mission and what is it that I want to say to the world is, okay, what can I go on a rant on? What do I call bullshit on that I want to just talk about because I think that this is shitty and someone else is saying this over here, but this is what I actually believe. And I can tell that you are such a powerhouse and really on a mission to serve the world, which is absolutely beautiful to see. And I hope I can feel it. I mean, obviously across from the room from you, but I hope people can feel it from your voice and the really true mission that you have. And I kind of want to bring us back to the power of decision, because I think I have a podcast episode on that. Actually,
I'll listen to it.
Yes, please do. I think it was like beginning podcast Brook Life, but it's so incredible because we were talking about earlier how you had those different paths and you're like, okay, I could have done this. I chose to do this. I went to Thailand. I did all of these things. Yet you said something shifted inside of you at one moment. How could what tips do you have for if someone who's going through something that feels really dark and feels really heavy and they're kind of in this place of, I don't know why this is happening to me, or I don't know how I'm going to get out of it. What am I going to do? And maybe it doesn't have to be, you know, a big cause, but it's someone who's in pain somehow, but knowing they can choose again, what advice do you have for them? And how could you maybe lead them back into the self-love discovery of knowing that they are enough?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a few answers, but my number one, if I'm looking at my own situation, is I had to talk to somebody. I had to make the decision to finally talk to somebody about it.
And that's so important because things get in our head and then they get really jumbled. And then they, you know, we have an inner mean girl or guy, whoever's listening, it doesn't matter. But we have an inner mean girl or guy for a reason. And that's why people talk about that, because it's there. It's nagging you. It's saying you're not enough. You're not enough. And that's not the truth. So talking to someone is huge, though, because you get someone else's opinion.
It was for me, and especially, you know, at the nonprofit where we are doing everything we can to try to help these girls. Because they come to us, and even like us, when we go through something, we don't want to walk around and think that we're a victim of anything. You know, we would, a lot of times, for me, I just wanted to pretend all these things didn't happen to me. And I didn't want to face the fact that I actually was a victim of something. And so when you, for me at least, and I think for a lot of people, honestly, when you're walking around with that baggage and that darkness and those things that happen to you, but you're too afraid to talk about or you're too afraid to face, and you think that they're not affecting you.
It's like one of those things that it's so heavy that you're like, I don't even know who to talk about this with. Like, why? Like, who wants to hear about it? You know? Of course.
I chose a therapist that I did a bunch of research on because I don't trust people, to be quite honest. I trust my husband. But there's only so much that, you know, you can talk about with somebody, with my husband, you know, there's only so much I can talk about. He did a great job. I mean, he was definitely used, I feel, by God to help me during the healing process and through all of this. But I also went to a therapist, and it was really important for me to have somebody that was trained and licensed to help me walk through what I had gone through. And so that was a big step for me. So I would recommend, whether it's a therapist or somebody else, just talk to somebody about it and let it get out, because I'm telling you, it's like poison inside of you if you don't talk to somebody.
And I think it depends on how deep the root issue is, right? That's obviously something that definitely needed to go down the therapy route, you know, and just knowing, I think the beautiful message here is knowing that you can ask for help.
Absolutely.
That's like the first things first. Ask for help and know that people will want to listen. Whether that's through a coach, a friend, a loved one, whatever that is, or if that's a therapist, whatever that looks like. Asking for help is so key to getting out of this feeling of, wow, why is this happening? Why am I going through this? Like, why me?
Yeah.
And realizing that you could turn this into something really beautiful.
You can absolutely take your mess and turn it into a message for somebody else.
Take your mess and turn it into a message.
You can.
Something I say a lot is that your message and your mission is bigger than your bullshit, right? And so that's basically what you just said. It's turning this messy stuff. And I mean, we're not shy to talking about messy stuff on this podcast. We've talked about, the things that I've gone through, the things that other people have gone through. We've had a lot of people on this podcast talk about the different, experiences that they've had that were life transformational. Right. And I think it just goes to show, here's where I am now. Yes, this happened to me, but you can also create this really beautiful life where now you get to help other people, which is so amazing. And then tell me again, what does Executive 31 do? Is that paired with the nonprofit, or is it kind of something separate?
I'm so excited about it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of both.
Okay.
So the nonprofit, in all transparency, I'm getting ready in 2020 to transition out of working at Extending Hands of Hope, and I'm going to focus on Executive 31. And over I'm going to support Extending Hands of Hope. I'm just going to do it in this new way.
Right.
So over my years of being nonprofit executive, oh my gosh, constant burnout. It is such a hard field to be in.
Yeah. How do you handle that? So, because a lot of people, burnout happens to everyone, especially entrepreneurs, because we are high achievers and we're badasses and we want to really make a difference. It gets
lonely.
And I feel like the more you go to the top, the lonelier it gets, which is why it's so important to have that community. But as you continue your conversation, I'd love to know a few tips of what you do to deal with burnout and how you kind of get back on track.
I don't know if I'm the best to share any tips on burnout. I've been through about 3 major episodes of burnout over the past 6 years.
Wow,
and again, burnout happens in all professions. In the nonprofit world, it can be even harder because you have so many different people that you have to please all the time. As a nonprofit executive, you have to, and as a female, okay? So as a female nonprofit executive, in your job, you have to please the staff, you have to please the donors, you have to please the board members, the clients, all the contracts that you're working with, the government, everybody, and it gets really exhausting in that manner. And then you feel really alone because you can't really talk to your board about everything. You can't talk to your staff. You feel like you don't really have anybody, and when you feel so alone, like in your mess like that, it's super isolating. It's super overwhelming. And so that really leads to burnout. Somebody like me, I'm like, I'm not stopping until it's done kind of a girl. Yeah, like I'm like a do it, get my hands dirty. I'll go eat at a fancy restaurant, and then I'll go roll around in the dirt if that's what it means. Like, whatever
I need to do, I'm all in. I love that.
Yeah, and so that's tough for me because I have a really hard time with boundaries. And it's self-imposed.
And I love that you're aware of this, though, right? Because the first key to change of anything is awareness. We have to be aware of what is going on here to be able to know that, hey, this is something that we can identify as something we want to change. We want to do better.
You have to because, I'm a mom, too, and I have 2 kids.
You are a Wonder Woman.
And I homeschooled during this time. I'm not anymore, but so it was a lot. And so I just experienced burnout. And for me, what helped me was my husband was a huge help. And it was
having that support
system. Phyllis is one of our staff members, and she just encouraged me all the time. I'm telling you, one thing that helped me was an encouraging word. Out of the blue, she would just send me something like, hey, you got this, you can do this. Because in my mind, I'm like, I can't do this. I'm going to. And it was just something, just the timing of it was amazing.
I'm going to give everyone an assignment right now.
Yeah.
I want you to text someone and just say, you've got this.
Yeah.
You can do this.
It's so powerful.
I believe in you.
Yeah.
And whatever you feel like the message needs to be, because I have goosebumps. You saying that, I joke about this a lot, but I'm actually very serious. Eventually in my professional career, I plan on hiring someone to sit on my couch and just tell me how amazing I am and that I look beautiful. And hey, Brooke, that was such an amazing idea. Like, I'm so proud of you, because affirmations are key. And I don't know what your love language is, but everybody wants to feel appreciated and everybody wants to feel loved and they want to feel heard. And so that's incredible that you had someone in your corner. And I'm so excited for all of the listeners to be that person for someone today.
Yeah, just
Thank you so much for sharing that.
It can change somebody's day.
Powerful.
And that's what I'm doing with Executive 31.
Yeah.
I realized that how powerful it was for me. Yeah. And there are a lot of women, nonprofit female executives, which is my target market for Executive 31. There's a lot of these women that they're literally sacrificing their life to make this world a better place.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
To help people, to help communities, to help neighborhoods, to help this world. Yeah. And they're sacrificing their health, their mental health, their families to something that is beyond themselves, right? And so the problem is the tenure for nonprofit female executives is 4 to 7 years, and then a lot of them are leaving the nonprofit world altogether. Okay. And it's because it's just
I'm so glad we're
too
talking
much.
about this. I was like, I don't know much about nonprofits. You know,
a lot of people don't. And when people hear nonprofits, you know, this is what happens with me too. They're like, oh, cute. Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah, like,
you work for a nonprofit.
Wow, like you have a big message. Yeah.
Yeah, and they don't take it serious, but it's a serious field to be in. You know, you're carrying the weight of literally other people's lives on your shoulders too. That's the reality. We're not here to save anybody. We empower these girls and these young women to move forward in their own healing. We try to bring them the resources they need. But at the end of the day, we carry that burden on us.
So you are going from empowering younger women to empowering the people who are running these nonprofits and all of that. That's
because
really,
when they're
really
strong
message,
and they're filled up and they're encouraged, then they can pour out to others.
Absolutely. I mean, we've all heard of the cliche saying, you have to fill your cup in order to pour into someone else.
Just true.
But it's the truth. It's a saying for a reason.
Right.
And it is the truth.
Yeah.
Wow. This has been so incredible. Okay, I have to ask my signature question of the podcast. And I know you've talked about a lot of things that you've been able to overcome, which I'm so honored and just blessed that you were able to open up to us. So I really appreciate you for doing that. But this podcast is all about becoming fiercely unstoppable. So can you tell us about a time that you did overcome an obstacle? It could be any obstacle at all. And when you did, you felt victorious.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, there have been multiple obstacles opening up this nonprofit. Yeah. And so, I mean, I have felt the lowest of lows trying to open up this nonprofit and the highest of highs. Yeah. And so
that's entrepreneurship too.
It is. You know? It is. I mean, it's totally transferable to all kinds of different fields. But for me recently, it was just the beginning stages of Extending Hands of Hope and opening it. Yeah. And you would think that when people would hear about this topic, this subject of human trafficking, and that you were going to do something about it to help these girls, you would think everybody would be on board, but that's not the truth. We were up against a lot of people opposing us even helping these girls, a lot of people saying it couldn't be done, that it was too hard, that these girls were prostitutes. And for me, you have to understand, this was a vision of mine years before I started opening up Extending Hands of Hope. And so it was very defeating for me. Yeah. And
it's almost like someone saying, hey, you're out there sharing your passion. Yeah. And all these naysayers and these trolls are coming up and saying, you can't do that. That's, not correct. This is what's actually happening.
Or they're not worth it.
Not believing in your message. And that's hard.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So for me, that was something that I was up against, outsiders trying to stop what was being done. And if we're talking about fiercely unstoppable, I was a stubborn, pardon my language, can I cuss?
Yeah, of course.
I was a stubborn bitch, to be quite honest. I'm like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're like,
but
no.
These girls deserve us doing whatever it takes. So
absolutely.
It was just plowing through all of that, getting the home, getting the license. It took us 3 years to get the home open and licensed, and it's still just such a mess, a mess in terms of getting everybody to support. Yeah. But coming out from that and having us be where we are now with the organization, to me, that is something that I'm so proud of, and I feel was a huge success.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the epitome of fiercely unstoppable, never giving up, having grit, being resilient.
Right.
And knowing that your message your mission is bigger than anything that you are going through.
Yeah.
This is awesome. Okay, tell people where they can find you. Tell people how they can get involved, because this is such an important message that more people need to share and really get involved with. And then, all your social media and all the fun things too.
Okay, awesome. So for the nonprofit, it's extendedhandsofhope.org. We are also on Facebook and Instagram under Extended Hands of Hope Colorado. So definitely follow us on there. I put a lot of updates on what we're doing on our social media. For Executive 31, I'm still in the process of that. I do have a website, but we're working on developing all that.
Yeah, as soon as you have those links, you can send them over. And we'll drop them in the show notes.
And that's an app. We're developing an app for that. Awesome. So we'll be able to share more about that as we go.
Yay. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here today. This was awesome.